Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the REDX podcast. My name is Haley Johnson. I'm going to be your host today. I am so excited for today's guest. We've got Dan Smith here with us. Hi, Dan. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. We're going to have a good conversation today. So I'm really excited. We're going to talk about lead conversion through follow-up. So it's going to be good fast little 30 minutes here talking about some good content that I think it can relate to every real estate agent, right? So awesome. So before we get started, I just want to talk to the audience that is watching live with us. If you're watching live, if you just want to chat in wherever you're watching, tell us where you're from so that we can see some faces going on here. Also, I just want to remind you to ask questions throughout this podcast because Dan's with us for the next 30 minutes. So take advantage of it, and we'll get to any questions that are asked. But I think that's it for a little intro. Dan, for people that don't know you, can you just give us a little brief introduction so they get to know you a little bit more?
Yeah. So let's see. First and foremost, I don't sell real estate anymore. I have gotten to the point where you all want to be. So I'm no longer working with buyers and sellers, which is great. I actually sold my first company to Keller Williams back in 2006. I was one of the original REDX crew from like the early 2000s when you guys had first launched. Took a couple years off, wrote a couple of books, began coaching and speaking, ran a coaching company for about a decade, spoken all over the world, which has been a lot of fun. Started a new company in 2020. COVID's all messed up because time frames got messed up. So started a new company in 2020. And Anvil Real Estate, and so I don't sling houses anymore. I am the captain of culture for the company and the success coach, and a shoulder to cry on and somebody to clap with, whatever. So that's my role today. Is I'm not really coaching or working with outside anymore agents. I do speak still on occasion, obviously. Stages are more fun than like digital, but still I do speak on both platforms. But most of my time is 99% of my time is now dedicated to my business family at Anvil Real Estate.
I love that. That's awesome because I mean, a lot of people get into real estate. A lot of new agents came when COVID hit. A lot of people got into real estate. And I think it's great because they want some sort of exit strategy, right? Eventually you want to have, I mean, even just the bare minimum, you want to have your database that is just easy repeat and referral business. You want to get to that point. And so we help people get there. REDX helps get more people into your database and more people in your pipeline. And so eventually you can graduate from the grind is what we always say. So sounds like you've done that. And so I want to get into that because you're the master here. You've done it. You've been in the trenches of real estate and now you're kind of doing your own thing, which is awesome. So what we're talking about today, lead conversion and follow-up and stuff like that. I first want to just kind of dive into lead generation. Like how are you getting leads? How are agents getting leads? How should they be getting leads? You know, I think that's the biggest thing right now. I was on Facebook earlier this week and I was on some new real estate agent group and they were just saying, I just can't get business. I just can't find quality leads. I can't find these potential clients and stuff like that. So why don't we start there and then we can kind of go through the flow.
Sounds good. And like I said, I'm not selling anymore, but we have grown our company to a little over 40 agents. And so I'm in the trenches with them daily. So we'll talk about what we're doing as a company and what they're doing as agents, I guess, to start that. How are they getting the leads? And that's never really changed over time. There's always been 3 ways to get leads, right? You could go out and get them, just grind your butt off to get them. You could call, you could knock, you could farm, you could host events, but you are actively out doing an activity to then bring in the opportunities and to bring in the leads, right? Mm-hmm. That's one way to do it. Tried and true, always been there, always will be.
Yeah.
Second way to do it is you can wait for them to come in, right? You have your sphere of influence, you come list me's, you just wait for people to know who you are and reach out to you. That's always been a way as well. It's always not been a great way either. because none of us know enough people, I think, that they're just going to like, I have to do something today. I'm going to reach out and talk to Haley, right? Because they have a lot of Dan and Haley's that they could reach out to if we're not reaching out to them. But we could sit around and wait for it to come. And that is a way that I think a lot of agents use, and it's a bad idea. And then the third way is the easiest way. It's also the most expensive way. That's how it works. And you could buy the leads, right? You can buy the leads. And so rather than going out and grinding for them, you replace the labor with a checking account, and you replace the hard work with a credit card number. And so you can just buy the leads and have them come in. It's kind of a hybrid of the buying now, which is a referral-based program. You can take leads that you don't maybe pay up front for, but pay a referral on the back end. Right. A lot of those companies are out there floating around now as well. But that's still a version of paying. You're just paying after, not before. It's a little bit more security because you're not paying if it doesn't happen to turn into anything, I guess. Right. But so anyway, 3 ways: wait, buy, grind are the 3 ways that people are getting leads. Our company, we do them all. We do them all to some degree, but those are really the 3 places to start.
So when you're waiting for them, I think obviously that's the ideal situation, right? Like they come to you, but that's not, I think that is like a result of buying and grinding them for them, right? Like if you have a database, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you're grinding for these leads and you get a big enough database where people are just referring you and they are coming to you, is that the goal?
Yeah, that's the goal. And it doesn't happen in the beginning. Some people try to get to that point way too early.
I see.
Like once you've been dominant, once you've hit home runs on a regular basis, once you've had strung together a number of years that you've built a real strong, duplicatable, predictable, awesomely profitable business, then you can take your foot off the gas just a little bit. And this can kind of be like your retirement plan a little bit, I guess you'd say, right? You don't have to grind, and you could probably ride that wave for a couple of years. The things coming into you. But most people want to go right into that mode, right? They just want to be like, hey, I door knocked yesterday. I'm gonna wait for the next month now. I cold called once. I'm gonna wait for the next 2 years and have stuff come in. You have to earn that right to wait. Otherwise, you're just waiting on your SOI. And that's never a successful plan. I mean, there's no top producing agents who built their business solely on their SOI.
Yeah.
They've built enough to live. They've built enough to maybe go on a vacation, but they're not building like top producer. They are living the life of their dreams worlds based on just who they knew when they got into real estate. Now, who you've met after you've been in real estate, through your database, through you're keeping in touch with them, your drip systems, your personal systems for years upon years. Now you can fall back onto that plan. You'll never experience growth again. Important to know. You're never going to be like, I did 24 deals last year, I'm going to do 30 this year on my wait for it to come to me plan. See, that won't happen. You can, what you're trying to do is just maintain. Maybe it's a maintenance plan
scalable
at that point, right? You're only going to maintain business and try not to have too much fall off, but you're not going to be growing your business by just sitting around and waiting for it. But if you get to the point that you're doing 30, 36, whatever that math is in different markets, transactions, maybe you can stop grinding and just maintain that level by finally having it come into you. But it's not a growth plan. It's a maintenance plan.
I think that's a really important distinction too, because I think about a lot of people get into the business and they look at these top producers who are just making a lot of money and they're really successful and they want to be like them. And so they do the activities that those top producers are doing. However, they made it to where they are because of the grind, because of building that database. And now they're more in maintenance mode because they're getting enough deals so they don't have to grind as much. And so I think looking at how those top producers started and implementing those strategies that they did at the beginning, like growing and grinding and calling and knocking and doing all those things, to where you get to a point where you just have to maintain, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's a blend. I think anybody who has, I'm going to do something real quick. I apologize, but somebody sent me a text. I saw it come across my screen and says, "Don't forget to take a stupid picture." There we go. So picture taken, check that box. I think that anybody who just grinds, it's not a good play. Anybody who just waits, not a good play. Anybody who just buys, not a good play. I do believe you have to have some balance between all 3.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I mean, especially because the grinding is like the less sexy part of real estate, right? It's getting on the phone and talking to people all day. And it's not the most fun activity, I think, when you
Yeah,
get into real
everybody
estate.
gets into real estate because they're like, oh, I want to control my own schedule. I want to have the freedom of not having to work. And then they work like 27 hours a day, 8.5 days a week, because of that, right? They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a deal, and I'm going to just be in a convertible with my hair blowing. I'll go to lunch, toast champagne, sign a contract, right? I mean, we have this different perception of what real estate is like, and then we get into it and see that it's so entirely different.
Right.
And maybe someday it's actually never that. I even know people on those shows. Those shows are so fake, guys. Like, I know people who are on those shows. Like, they have a driver and a car show up to drive them for the day, and then when they leave, they go back to their regular old car. So it's never like that. Don't get fooled. Don't get fooled.
The media, it's crazy. And so if you're working so hard for these leads, I mean, because it's not easy, you know, to call for hours or to go knock doors, or I mean, or you're buying them, right? So you're spending your hard-earned cash on these things. You don't want them to go to waste, right? You don't want them to just slip through the cracks. So let's go kind of into that. How, like, I know we're talking about follow-up today. So, like, how do you make sure that those leads count instead of like just falling down and ending up in the trash or whatever?
So yeah, because it's like a circle, right? It's like that Lion King circle of life. It's like the circle of how things work. Without lead generation, leads coming in, you probably don't have a real great business. But even if you have a ton of leads coming, you have 12 leads coming in, or you have 1,200 leads coming in a month, right? If you're not converting the leads, which is the next step of the circle of life, right? If you're not converting the leads, you have no business. So you could have a ton of lead generation, but no lead conversion, nothing coming in. So I always do this thing. It's called, when I'm talking to our crew, I'm always reminding them. We even have some fun art up in our office about it. The money is in the FU. Right? Now, that could go a couple of different ways, as you would imagine.
The first thing that came to my mind.
our art supports that with certain digits of our fingers that we might have in the office. So the money is in the FU. But there's this movie out there called The Gambler. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. Mark Wahlberg is in it, and John Goodman. And John Goodman's like this really rich guy, and he's telling Mark Wahlberg, who's this kind of stupid idiot who keeps losing his money, he's got to get to the point where he has FU money. And it's the actual FU, right? It's not the follow-up money. He has FU money. He says, you got to have enough money that when somebody wants you to do something, you don't want to do it, you have the ability to say, FU, I'm not going to do it. You got to get to that point that you can pick and choose who you want to work with and who you want to do things with. Nice. Because you have the ability to. So I think of that as real estate agents, right? How great would it be, everybody, if you ran across a buyer who was sucking the life out of your soul, but you're like, oh, I need that commission check, right? So what if you had some FU money sitting behind you? You'd be like, FU, I'm going to work with a better buyer. Like, we want to get to that place of our careers that we can do that, right? So in order to do that, the money is in the FU. You've got to be really good at the follow-up. If you're not really good at the follow-up, you will never ever get to that point, because that's where you don't like get on the phone with a cold call. You don't get on a phone with a Zillow lead. You don't meet somebody at an open house. You don't go out door knocking and be like, hi, I'm Dan, do your thing. And they're like, oh, can I sign a contract with you? See, it never really happens on the spot. It all happens maybe a day later. It's usually not a day later, a week or a month or a quarter or a couple quarters later. That's when the deal finally comes together and becomes a reality most of the time, right?
Right.
And how does that happen? Because you are good at follow-up from day one to day X. You stayed with them, brought them along, brought them down the pipe, strengthened the relationship. So no matter where you're at, you have to be good at the follow-up. That's where the money is. The money's in the follow-up, because maybe 1-2% of your business is going to come from luck on the spot. The rest of your money is going to come through follow-up. If you're not good at follow-up, that means the rest of your money is not coming. If you're really, really, really good at follow-up, you're going to have a lot more rest of money coming your way.
Yeah, I think this is like the most foundational thing, right? Like we talk about follow-up all the time, because that's where you're going to get your business, because people will call and they'll be like, oh, REDX doesn't work. Like, I didn't get a hold of people, or I didn't, and that was from one call, like trying once. And that's the thing, is like, so many people. And that's why I think, like, in the follow-up, you get away from more of the competition because less people are going to be calling as many times. And so if you're following up with these leads, like call them 2-3 times, I think like how many touches does it take? Like 6, 8, something like that, where like you get most of your deals when you're in that range of how many times you followed up with them. It's like you have to put in a little bit more in order to get the lead.
There's that old stat, right? 90% of the business comes after the 5th attempt, yet 90% of the agents never get to the 5th attempt.
Yeah, why is that? What is
it's like beating a dead horse sometimes, I tell you. Sometimes even my own crew is pretty disciplined, and they know the rules, and they know like I'm really good at inspecting what I expect in our systems and our platforms. And we do this thing called white on rice. Like you're going to be on that lead like white on rice. And so they've got to be all over them. And we have a minimum expectation of 3 times a day, every day for 21 days before they can consider throwing in the towel.
That's some follow-up right there.
That's some follow-up right there, right? And interestingly enough, we do a lot of stuff with Zillow. I know everybody on here hates Zillow. Boo, Zillow. Love Zillow. We'll make a couple $1 million this year from Zillow. So big Zillow lover here. I know you guys don't like them. But I can tell you that we outperform the rest of the Zillow market by 8 times in following up what they call nurture leads, because we do white on rice. It's very simple. Our guys are reaching out 21 times, and within 1 week period of time, most people are never getting to 5. Therefore, we have an 8 times better return than the average Zillow person agent because we're all over them. So yeah, you have to really have that kind of a mindset that you're going to go hunt. You're going to go hunt for your food, right? You're going to go hunt for dinner. And so you're not willing to follow up with people. You're just not willing to grow your business. No one has ever, Mike Ferry used to say this, right? And I like giving Mike credit where credit's due. It's so true. No one's ever called you up and said, you know what? I've decided I'm not going to use you because you're really good at follow-up. Don't like that about you. Don't like the fact that you follow up really good. No one's ever said that once in the history of ever. Right?
Right.
So, I might disagree with a lot of stuff Mike says these days. In early 2000s, I probably agreed with 90%, probably swung that pendulum now. But some of that stuff that Mike used to say was gold, and it is still gold, and that's one of them. You never lose business because you are superb at follow-up.
It's foundational.
Yeah.
You would think, because I mean the math here, like 8 times better, like you make all of this money when you're following up more and more, and they're just not doing it. And so it's just like, I don't know if you need to just talk more about the success stories, or if they're just looking for that person who's going to answer the phone and be like, you know what? I was just thinking about listing my house today, and you called me at the exact time that I was ready to do it. Like that's going to happen maybe once, twice in like a huge long period of time. They're
looking for rollovers, right? Yeah. Not something that they've got to go hunt. They just like walked upon dinner, like, oh look, somebody set the table for me. There's dinner, right? So it doesn't happen very often. You ever been camping? You ever showed up to your camp and food was already ready? Yeah, I don't think so. So you gotta cook. You gotta hunt it and cook it yourself, right? And that's kind of what this is.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about like what these phone calls are sounding like. So you have that initial phone call, right? Well, whether they answer or not. And people have all sorts of scripts for that initial message. But what about these follow-ups? Like, what are you saying in those calls?
So for the initial script, we have what we use, which is everybody's got their own thing. But the follow-up now is not really about the messaging. It's about the consistency. It's about the persistency, right? So the messaging is quite easy after the second or third call, because you're not going to give your whole, especially if they don't pick up the phone. If you're picking up the phone, you're not even following up that much. You probably had a conversation, and now you can act appropriately and behave appropriately. But so I'm talking about from like, let's just call it a lead coming in now. Yeah. Came in via website, came in via somehow, some way, found its way to us. And we're following up. I didn't answer the phone. First one's going to be a little bit of a detailed message about who we are, how we can help them, how to get a hold of us. Second one will be a little bit of a reiteration to that. By the third one, we start to back off of that. By the fifth one, we're not even on that page. We're like best friends. right? So the third one will be like, hey, it's just me again. I know I called you twice today. I'm going to keep reaching out until I hear from you. It's like a warning, right? Then the next day, it's like, hey, I told you I'd be giving you a call again. Give me a holler. It's Dan. Fourth one will be like, Dan again. One of these days I'll track you down. Glad to see you're so busy. Sixth one will be like, hey, 2 days in a row, but don't worry, I won't give up. I'll be here every day until I can find you. I'm here for you when you're ready. So it's kind of fun, but the messaging is quite simplistic. It's just like, we're here, we're in front of you, right? Now, let's be honest. Every lead that comes through lead platforms is not good. Most of the leads that come through lead platforms is not good. You have to dig through. I don't care if you're dialing the phone book, or if you got a lead coming from Zillow, or if you're doing Google paper. Not good is going to be the answer. You go down to the phone book, most of those are not going to be good people, right? Because you're just looking for somebody who's like, I was just thinking about selling today. Very rare. But eventually, if you make enough calls, you will find people, and you will get some good ones here and there. That's the whole game, right? And so when we do get them on the line, one of two things generally happens. One, they're not happy with us. Because we've been on them a lot. And some agents get really freaked out about that. They're like, oh my God, I don't think they're going to use me now. It's like, they were already quite effectively not using you, just so you know. Like, they hadn't called you. They'd never reached out to you. They clicked a button on accident, probably, or whatever. Like, they weren't using you guys. There's no downside here, okay?
Nothing changed. Okay.
Nothing changed in your life at all, except somebody said I wasn't going to use you, and you're like, ah. Or the other happens though on occasion, which is like, you know what? You're persistent. That's impressive. I appreciate you staying with us. And that's what we're looking for. Yeah. Like, the people are like, I clicked the button on accident. I'm not even buying a home. They're repossessing my car. Like, oh my God, he's not going to use me now. No, he wasn't. Who cares? Move on to the next one, right? So it is a numbers game to a certain extent. Be it cold calls, warm calls, lead calls, whatever kind of calls.
Yeah, and you mentioned it kind of like, this mindset, people go into it thinking like, oh no, what's going to happen? And like, okay, let's actually think about it logically. What's going to happen? Okay, they say no. All right, moving on. Like, it's nothing terrible.
Like 50% of the real estate community will be like, oh my God, that's it. I can't even work this next week. I cannot take the rejection. Right? It's so crazy to me.
So how do you build that? How do you build that thick skin? Is it just like a mindset shift of being like, okay, this no is just getting me closer to a yes, or what would you say?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. There's that whole old thing like 100 or 99 no's, keep it on a chart, write down all your no's and you get the yes. There's that old school, telemarketing mentality. There's a Glenn Ross. First place gets a Cadillac. Second place gets a steak knife set. Third place gets fired. There's a little bit of that happens. But really, it's just like, you have to understand. And I do a lot of like just motivational reading and really get into a lot of people who've been successful in reading their biographies. And you can't find a successful person and to read about their life where they haven't acknowledged this fact. To experience success, you have to experience massive failure. And so you want one piece of success, you probably need 20, 30, 40 failures. Now, I relate that into phone calls. You want one person who's going to sign a contract with you, you got to find 30, 40, 50 people who are not going to sign a contract with you. Now, if you're going to take a whole year to find 30, 40, or 50 people who are not going to sign a contract with you, that means apparently you're probably only going to get one contract signed. But if I can find 30, 40, 50 people per day, well, the math holds that I might be able to find a person per day who will, right? And so my last year of business, I didn't mention this, but I feel like I'm like so old now, I'm like dinosaur ages, right? But my last year of selling, I did 321 sides as a solo independent agent. So I closed more than one escrow every single day. That I worked, right? And I didn't have like buyer's agents, and there were no teams or no REO short sales like there were in that whole sub meltdown crisis. Obviously, there's a little bit more inventory than today, but I sold a lot of homes, right? Yeah. And because I would go out and I would fail 50, 60, 70 times a day. Sometimes we did this thing at least twice a week called 100 contact day, that we'd make sure we made 100 contacts over the course of the day. It could take us 8 to 12 hours, right? It was crazy town, right? We were crazy kids back then. I don't know if I could do it in like my old age now, but man, I had 2 kids. I had no damn money. I was grinding. And so you have that kind of failure you're going to succeed. But you can't succeed if you're not willing to swing the bat. You can't hit the home run if you're not willing to strike out, right? Michael Jordan has so many quotes about how he's failed more than anybody he knows. That's why he's the greatest. Thomas Edison and the light bulb and Henry Ford, and just you find any great successful person, and they are going to have stories of complete obliteration in their lives that were happening to them. And so I think agents need to get hey, check this out. You don't got to get like freaking completely obliterated. You just got to get good at people being like, yeah, I'm not going to use you as a realtor. Not complete obliteration, people, right? They're just not going to use you as a realtor. Move on to the next one. No big deal.
Yeah, I think like you saying all these people like that have had these great accomplishments or are really successful, the failures, they don't make the headlines. That's not what's on the front of the book. That's not what's on, like the headline is like, oh my gosh, look at what this person did or accomplished this or whatever. Like, oh, I did this many sides and this many transactions in a year. But you don't see all of the failure that took to get there, because that's not, again, that's not the best part. That's not like, but it's how you got there, and you have to like actually get into the story or get into that person's life or to recognize that, because everyone just wants to get to the best part. Like that's human nature, right? We just want the best place with the least amount of effort. That's what we want.
Yeah, path of least resistance. Welcome to humankind, right? You want to differentiate. So there's again, Mike used to say this. Okay, I haven't brought Mike Ferry up in a conversation twice in like a decade, but it's doing the things you don't want to do, especially on the days you don't want to do them. That's what will separate you from your competition. You say that all the time. Spot on. Right? Doing the things you don't want to do, especially on the days you don't want to do them, because the rest of your competition, they won't do those things. And they definitely won't do them on the days they don't feel like doing them. Yeah. And that's what's going to differentiate you. So you got to get that mindset going, right? That's
and something you said, I mean, you mentioned consistency a lot. Obviously with follow-up, it's consistency is the name of the game. And so with that consistency, this is something I heard earlier this week too, of this. I mean, I think it was somebody who was trying to lose weight, and they tried to they were doing all or nothing all the time. So they would either go all in or they would do nothing, right? And they said that once I started to focus on being consistently imperfect is when I started to succeed, right? So you don't even have to be perfect to do everything. You just have to be consistent, and it's better than, right? Like calling these people is better than calling nobody. And so
and binging, that's so true, right? Because you're like, oh, I haven't made calls in 3 weeks. I'm gonna call like 80 people today. You call 80 people today, and you're like, well, that was effing horrible. And then you take like 2-3 weeks off, you don't call anybody. That's not consistent, right? That's binging.
That's all or nothing.
So you just do 10 people a day for 8 days to get to your 80. Right? Figure out how to have that consistency in your actions and in your activities, and do it on days that you feel good, do it on days that you feel bad, do it on days that you're busy, do it on days that you're slow. A lot of people say to me, wow, I have so much going on, Dan, I'm overwhelmed, right? Check this out. You can either be overwhelmed or underwhelmed. Choose wisely. Right? That's the kind of one of the things. Like, because there's only one or two things. You're like, so much going on or not enough going on.
Yeah.
There's never in your life going to be the perfect amount going on. So choose wisely. Which one do you want to have happen? So I'll take overwhelm every time. And when I start to feel overwhelmed, if I got to do this or that, I'm always like, first world problems, baby. Let's go. Right? So
because which one's going to lead to success more often than not, right? Like if you're underwhelmed, there's nothing that's pushing you, or so I love that comparison. That's awesome.
So follow up is key. How you're doing it. Everyone got. I don't think there's any magic. How often? What's my cadence? How often should I text versus email versus call versus mail versus drop versus pop buys? There's all these different things that real estate agents have developed now. And maybe perhaps in an attempt to get it so convoluted that then they could not do anything because they had to plan doing nothing. Right, it doesn't matter what the cadence is, just go out there and do it. GSD, just go out there and get shit done. That will lead to good things.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're saying. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the ultimate cadence or anything. It's just like figure out what works and you'll be successful.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And then you have to understand your target, right? I mean, if it's an SOI, you're following up in a certain way and a certain frequency of how when if they're an internet lead, if they're an open house lead, if they're an expired or a canceled, right? If they're at FISBO, they all have their own little nuances, but there's one component that's key with all of them: consistent outreach to them. Like, I don't even use the word prospecting anymore. Right? Like, I've like stricken it from my vocabulary because it's become like the 4-letter F-bomb for like real estate agents. You're like, so talk to me about and by the time you get to that, like, you don't even get out of the second syllable, right? You're like, I don't want to hear it. Right? So I actually have replaced that with the word outreach. Talk to me about outreach. Talk to me about what you're doing this week. What's your outreach going to look like? Right? And it's just changing the vernacular, changing the mindset a little bit that goes with it.
Yeah, a little bit more of a positive connotation. Like, prospecting is not necessarily a negative connotation, but it's become that, you know? And so changing that up with outreach, I like that. It's a simple, just little switch.
Just a little switch. And it's all it is, right? Prospecting means you're reaching out to people.
Yeah.
It's like code word.
I like it. Okay, well, we're getting here to the end, but I just want to like wrap up. Do you have any like final last words about follow-up, lead conversion, things that you can leave our audience with today?
Schedule. It's all about the schedule. Right? So it's all about, if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist. That old cliche. You know why it's a cliche? Because it's true. It's stood the test of time to become a cliche. So you have to control your schedule. You need to time block better. I don't care who you are. If your name's Dan, master schedule guy, by the way, can still time block and schedule better. Everybody can schedule better. You've got to put things in your schedule. You've got to find a time that's going to support them. Don't put things at the wrong times, and build in constant time each day for the things that are important in your business. You know, I do a thing with our agents called the 3 Ps every day. Even though I said I don't use the word prospecting, I don't, because I've down initialized it. They do every day. They're supposed to be doing the 3 Ps, right? And they're supposed to be practicing. They're supposed to be previewing, and they're supposed to be prospecting. Right? So 3 P is just kind of a fun acronym for: was I learning my inventory? Because that's your job as a real estate agent. Was I working on my craft, perfecting my skill? That's practice. And was I doing outreach? Was I like making an outward bound attempt at finding new business? That's prospecting. So you got to do that every day and figure out how to work those 3 things into your schedule on a daily basis.
I love it. I think this has been awesome. 30 minutes just about foundational things that I think people just don't, you know, it just goes over your head, or you hear follow up, and you're like, all right, well, I know. Okay, great. But I think this is just a good reminder of how to be successful at its very core in real estate. And being consistent, following up, lead generation, lead conversion, stuff like that. So thank you so much, Dan, for spending your time with us today. This has been awesome. I've had a really good time talking to you, chatting with you today. And I'm sure our listeners have as well. To the people that are listening, thanks so much for tuning in. And be sure to like subscribe here. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Or if you want to get our weekly emails, you can always go to theredx.com/podcast. All those good things to sign up for future episodes and stuff like that. But this is farewell. We'll see everybody back here a week from now, same time, same place. It's the same thing every week. But yeah, and hopefully we'll have to have you back, Dan. So this has been awesome.
Good. Thank you. Hey, thank you very much.